just to give you a little preface on Brandon's visit here today, we have talked with the Matt Hickson and Brandon and possibly a couple of others with the school, with Board of Education. They approached us a couple of months back about the possibility of purchasing some property in Phipps Bend proper, and he's gonna do a presentation for you today, and then we'll talk a little bit more about what's going on. One of the things, keep in mind that is paramount with all industries, not just here, but anywhere you go, is trying to find good, qualified, trained employees that are ready to go to work. And when we first visualized Phipps Bend and during the early planning stages, and Ronnie, I guess, and possibly Tommy, I don't know who else was around back in those days, but we visualized an educational corridor there, and we had the TCAT on the left side as you go in, and that took quite a bit of coercing among different ones to get that school built. And then on the other side, we had another plot of ground for the possibility of Walter State or some other educational facility. It's 25 years later, and I guess this is where we're at today. So with that, I'll turn it over to Brandon, and then we'll discuss where we're at on this project. And Brandon, this is Brandon Williams. Tell them your title.
I'm the CTE supervisor, so career and technical education supervisor. So thanks for having me, and I promise to be as brief as possible. I know everybody's busy and we've got a lot to do today. But like Larry said, we approached Larry and Rebecca a couple months back just to float this idea and see if there was any appetite for what we had in mind. We just want to start by saying the mission of Hawkins County Schools is to ignite a lifelong passion for learning. And we hope to accomplish that through instilling values of responsibility, integrity, and service among our students. In CTE, we go a little bit further, and our goals in CTE really, first and foremost, are to educate and motivate our students, to partner with post-secondary institutions such as TCAT. Mr. Charles Johnson in the back there is a real strong ally of the school system, and also with local business and industry. And then if we're able to do that, hopefully a pipeline for employment into business and industry. So for the past year and going into this year, we are focused on two things primarily within CTE. One is work-based learning, and that's what most of us would have remembered as co-op from our high school days. So it's very similar to a co-op program, students able to leave school either half a day or for a portion of the day to report to work. The difference in co-op and work-based learning is we take it a step further, and it's not that we don't want the student to only earn a paycheck. We want to take that a step further and have them learning real-world skills on the job that they're going to carry over into their career after their graduation. So we're focused on expanding those opportunities for our students. And the second thing, and several of you in this room, you've heard me talk about these things a few times, or you've read about us doing this stuff, so I apologize for the repetition. But the second thing is industry credentials. We're really focused on getting our students as many industry credentials before graduation as possible. We want them to be as employable as possible even before they graduate. But after they graduate, we certainly want them to be as employable as possible and able to enter the workforce immediately if that's what they choose. Now, several students are going to choose to go the 4-year university pathway, and that's perfectly acceptable. Several are going to choose to go directly to a TCAT facility or to another post-secondary partner for advanced training, maybe not a 4-year degree, maybe a 2-year degree or just a certificate. But we want them to be employable immediately upon graduation, and we feel like these two goals really help us get toward that end goal. So we approach that in several ways, and one of those is to build strong relationships. So Hawkins County Schools, we have a strong relationship with TCAT. Mr. Johnson and I have worked together for the past several months now, and I think our partnership is as strong as it's ever been, at least in my tenure. We also have partnerships and relationships with local business and industries. We've worked with several in the area here. And same for TCAT. TCAT has relationships in both directions. What we're trying to do and what we hope to do and accomplish is to bring all three of those entities together. And we want to get to that center little triangle there in that Venn diagram. And that's the sweet spot. So we've got a strong relationship with post-secondary training. We've got a strong relationship with business and industry, and that's what truly will help us get to that pipeline for employment. So, Mr. Lund, hopefully in a few years' time, you're not going to have any trouble finding an employable individual when you have an opening. And we want that to be an individual who graduated from Hawkins County Schools and resides in Hawkins County. That's good for everybody. That's good for our students. That's good for TCAT. That's good for Hawkins County as a whole. And it's good for all the business and industry partners in the room. So that's the vision. And one way we want to advance that vision is just what Mr. Elkins said. We approached Larry and Rebecca and asked, hey, would you be at all interested in selling us a piece of property? We would like to explore the idea of constructing a CTE facility across the street from TCAT, and use that facility to train your future employees, to train our current students and future students for Mr. Johnson across the street there at TCAT. The exciting thing about this, from my point of view, is one, it allows us, the school system, the opportunity to expand access to students all across the county to a number of programs. So we have lots of CTE programs across the county, but we don't offer the same programs at each school. Clinch, for instance, the students at Clinch High School, they only have two CTE programs. And that's for a variety of reasons. One, there's just no space over there. There's no space in that building to set up a machine tool lab. There's also no funding to do that. Okay, it's a small student population. It's difficult to justify hiring a full-time instructor for 40 high school students. So the programs they have available at Clinch are engineering and teaching as a profession. Those programs can be taught by academic teachers with appropriate endorsements. So engineering can be taught by a qualified science teacher or a qualified math teacher. So we can pay a science teacher to teach on their planning one period a day and offer that CTE program. I don't think we would ever truly be able to justify hiring a full-time CTE teacher for that campus just based on the fact you can't fill up enough of their schedule. If we have a facility we can bus students to, and this has been done in the past, we bus students to Cherokee for CTE programming. That opens the opportunity to those students to participate in agriculture classes, welding classes, machine tool class, hopefully in the very near future. Same for Cherokee and volunteer students. So those students have several more opportunities at their home campus, but they're not exactly the same. Welding, for instance, is offered at volunteer, but not at Cherokee. Now, there are plenty of students at Cherokee who would love to take a welding course, and several of them actually do go to TCAT and take a welding course as dual enrollment while they're a high school student. We would like to be able to give them those entry-level welding courses on site at Cherokee, but we're up against two problems. One, we're out of space. So we're out of space in our CTE facilities in both locations. The other is funding. Startup funding for a welding program or a machine tool program, you're looking at a big number. So I keep mentioning machine tool. We're working on some grant opportunities to open a machine tool program at Cherokee High School. You're looking at $250,000 to start that program. That does not include the staffing cost. So there are a lot of challenges to expanding access. This is one potential solution. We have a facility where we can house some of those programs that are only offered in one location and bus students to that facility or allow students to travel to that facility. It expands that access. The other is close proximity to TCAT. So we have students who travel to TCAT every day for dual enrollment courses. It just makes sense. You'd be right across the street from TCAT. You could do high school courses first thing in the morning, walk across the street for a dual enrollment course, and then report back to your home campus for, say, a math class or a science class. And then being located within the industrial park itself also makes a lot of sense to us, going back to that first bullet or that first goal of what we have in CTE of work-based learning. We want to be in close proximity to some of our industry partners. We would like for some of these students to be able to take a course first thing in the morning or potentially report to, say, Cooper Standard and work an hour and a half in an internship placement, then report to the facility to take a class before they go on back to their home campus. So there are a lot of benefits to this idea. I've thought about it for a long time now, and I can't think of really any downside aside from cost, potentially. It's going to be expensive, of course. But there are a lot of reasons we think this is a good idea. What we got in mind is to expand that education corridor, like Mr. Elkins was mentioning. And my vision for it would be, as you approach TCAT on the left entering the park and take a look, as of today, there's an empty field right there across the street from them on Technology Drive. But my vision would be to basically have a mirror image of their facility, and it would be essentially the same footprint. It'd be very welcoming. We think that there are some benefits to the Joint Venture Board, the Industrial Development Board, as far as a new facility in that location, a new educational facility. We think there are some potential benefits to you all as well. Beyond that pipeline for employment, that's the ultimate goal. Yes, we definitely want to make sure we're sending employable individuals to the business and industry here in Hawkins County. We also envision the opportunity for expanded workforce training. So for the staff that's currently in place at Cooper Standard, at Contour, Technoglass, we want them to be able to come over and use our facility to train their employees. Okay, so we're doing some of this, well, I shouldn't say we. Mr. Johnson's doing some of this at TCAT now. We want to be able to expand that. We want to work with TCAT to make use of the facility after hours. So from 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock, we're going to have high school students in here taking welding classes, taking whatever. At 3:05, we want Mr. Johnson to be able to send a machine tool instructor across the street to make use of that lab. He doesn't have a machine tool lab at the Hawkins County TCAT facility. But if we've got one across the street and we're not using it between 3 o'clock in the afternoon and 8 o'clock the next morning, he can send an instructor over there and teach adults. Why not? I mean, that just makes sense to us. It'd be another potential meeting venue, so we think that we'd like to make this a facility that would be open to the business and industry in the park. If they needed to do some professional development with their employees, they could come over and use it as a meeting venue. If they had outside clients that they were working with and wanted to see what was available within the park, we would want them to be able to come in and take a look around. We really think, and I truly believe, that this type of facility could be a strong recruiting tool for the Industrial Development Board. And I'll let Mr. Elkins tell the story. I think he may have shared it with you before already, but we really believe that this could be a strong recruiting tool for business and industry looking at potentially locating within the industrial park. We want Larry and Rebecca to bring those folks into our facility and say, this is what we have available in terms of training our high school students and our adult population with Hawkins County Schools Technical Training Center and the TCAP facility adjacent to one another. And we're willing to, not only are we willing to work with you to craft our curriculum to meet your specific needs with our current students, but we're also willing to take your current employees and help you train them or allow you to use our space to train them. And I'll stop there and let you, Larry, would you like to share the recruitment piece of, I can't recall the name of the company.
Well, we don't want to divulge the name of the company.
Okay.
Yeah, this is still to be announced by the governor here in a few days, but one of the main items that they got back to networks about after they had looked at the facility or the properties and went through our TCAT there at Phipps Bend, they were escorted on to Kingsport to our camp, which is if you've not seen that facility, it's unbelievable. And I'm not sure exactly who funded that. I guess the city of Kingsport, Pal Barger, and Eastman, or who all. There have been several involved in that. But after they toured that facility, we were competing against another state, and that sold them. Is having a quality education facility that trains employees, has them ready to go. So that's one of the reasons that, when we first envisioned this industrial park up there and got to looking around at the other counties and areas that we're going to be competing against, we saw the need to have some education and training there close, and so we were able to convince the Board of Regents to build the facility there at Phipps Bend. And I don't know how far back that goes, Charles. Do you know what year we built it, or Ronnie? We're talking
96, 97.
96 or 97. So it's been around for, close to 25 years now. And Rebecca and I went over and toured the facility at Elizabeth. If you want to be impressed with a Tennessee College of Applied Technology, go to Elizabeth. It is unbelievable what they have in place over there. I know all of you are familiar with Kubota. They got Kubota equipment that's brand new, that's been produced and shipped in there, because every Kubota maintenance person in the United States ends up at the TCAT in Elizabeth to get training to work on that particular piece of equipment. You got Bell Helicopter over there. They all train their mechanics there at TCAT. That's the vision that we had. That's what the vision of our current governor, Governor Lee, has, that you train you better train employees to go into that particular field. And you know, having been on the Board of Education years ago when they first built Cherokee and Volunteer, I've seen this thing ebb and flow. You know, you get, at that time, they actually built the vocational schools prior to building Cherokee and Volunteer. That was the first buildings that went up back in 1980, if my memory serves me correctly. And then it kind of ebbs, you know. It's one of those things that, you know, you train your kids to go to college and everything. And as you all know, most, I don't want to say most, but at least half of the students that graduate from our high schools go into some form of industrial work. And all of this ties into what Brandon's talking about as far as training employees. When they come out with their diploma, we can funnel them right into a TCAT and further get their training. One thing I didn't know exactly, but like cosmetology is a big deal. It has nothing to do with industries per se, but they can teach cosmetology in high school, but they can't get their license until they actually go to a TCAT or to a training center. And so that's a big deal right now. So we just feel like it's the right way to go. I think it's a good selling point for the park. And along with that, I'll read you the motion that we had yesterday. We had a Phipps Bend joint venture meeting, and Brandon and Matt Hickson met with them early on just to see if there was an interest there before we went too far down this road, and just to make sure. And so they showed some interest. They felt like it was the right thing to do. And so yesterday morning they came back and gave the same presentation that you saw today. And Larry Eastep with the Phipps Bend Joint Venture Board made a motion, seconded by Craig Dennison, to make available lot number 3, if approved by the Hawkins County Industrial Development Board and the Kingsport Industrial Development Board and TVA. The ownership of the property would not change until the Board of Education has identified a funding source for the proposed facility, and they put a 3-year time limit, which could be extended if you're working toward this and just not got it there yet. But they wanted to make sure that it's done in a timely manner. And we're talking about a little less than 9 acres that is lot number 3 there that I think most of you are familiar with, directly across the street from the TCAT Center. And they're going to try to build a facility that kind of mirrors the facility across the street, which is, if you've been up there, you know it's a very good looking facility. TVA is on board. They were brought in because they have to approve all this stuff, and Tim Tidwell, they think it's a great idea, and so they're on board. And this motion passed unanimously by the Phipps Bend Board. So it's up to you all now to, I guess, concur with that. But before we take a vote or anything like that, I want to open the floor up, because I know there's a lot of questions and things from you all about it, or maybe you're sold, I don't know, whatever.
Charles, do you have anything to add from TCAT's perspective? So we floated this idea past Charles and Jerry Young with TCAT Morristown as well, and thought I'd give Charles an opportunity to give TCAT point of view if you would like.
Well, to me, this is one of the best ideas I've heard in a long time. in terms of any type of education. I think it's very needed. You know, of course, we have similar situations in some other counties that are thriving. This is, since, you know, going by what Brandon said and what we've discussed, this is almost like, you know, expanding their campus without actually expanding it. We're very welcome and very ready to work hand in hand with Hawkins County. I never make a decision, and I make sure that in terms of Hawkins County, that Mr. Young never makes a decision unless we talk about and discuss how it's going to affect Hawkins County schools and Hawkins County people, students and otherwise. And we are seeing some benefits of this. So we've had one, when you got to crawl before you can walk. I realize that, but you always start out with one. We've had an apprenticeship. We have a student that starts an internship at Contour Glass this coming weekend. And so we're seeing some benefits of this partnership, just, you know, that we've had so far. I see nothing but good that can come out of this. I can't think, you always want to look at the pros and cons. I have a very hard time coming up with any negative thoughts on this at all, honestly.
I would follow up. We also met with Jerry Young, who is the
President of the
president of Marshtown TCAT, and we're a branch of that. They've got a branch in Sevier County. They've got one in Greenville. We're kind of modeling after the one in Greenville at this time, and you know how successful Greene County has been in you know, their programs over there and attracting the industry and things. And like I say, the Phipps Bend group and Jerry and Charles and everybody has been very supportive of this and on board with this whole concept. So, any other, you all have some comments or something? Like I say, we're kind of looking at the future. You know, some of us are getting to the age where we're ready to check out, and I just think this is a good way of leaving this for the future. You know,
what funding, what funding opportunities do we have?
That'll be left up to the Board of Education. I know they have presented this to the Board of Education, and they got the approval to go ahead and test the waters to see about getting the properties. But now they'll have to come back. We're not going to be a funding source for this thing. This is all. The only thing we've got in it is the land, and we're working on that part of it. Otherwise, it's just it's up to the Board of Education. I just feel like it's a really good thing, not just for Phipps Bend, but for you. You've got a new group that we're going to talk about here in just a few minutes, Cardinal Glass, that's coming in. You've got all the other industries throughout Hawkins County that will benefit from this, you know. I know Brandon mentioned a program that they're working with, and I don't know what you call them anymore, Dodge, ABB, about training employees. That's the biggest thing that we get when we meet with a plant manager is, you know, we're here, we've got the facility, we need employees that are trainable, that come in with a good work ethic, and that's what we're trying to impress upon the Board of Education and TCAT and everybody else is trying to get people to work and that know a little bit about what they're doing when they start. It's hard to take somebody that you know, and I'll go back to my own experience at hiring linemen. If you've been raised on a farm and you're used to using hand tools and stuff, they're a lot easier to get trained to be a lineman and using their hands and everything than they are if they grew up in downtown Rogersville and never did use a hammer and a nail or a saw or monkey wrench or whatever. It's always good to have some experience, and if you can get some of those things out of the way while they're going to school, and that's the whole premise behind this whole thing. So.
Brandon, so a typical day, the students will be bused in and out from the three schools? Is that on school buses, or some that could drive, I guess, with the parking the lots that we see on the drawing? Is that?
Yeah, we've had both. So this model is nothing new. It's happening currently in Greene County. So Greenville City Schools has the Green Technology Center across the street from Greenville City High School. And all of Greene County high school students have access to that same facility via bus. And I think some of them drive. I'll have to check on that. But students who are able to transport themselves, I believe we would be able to let them do that. So and this is several steps down the road to figure out the logistics of the scheduling, but I imagine we would approach this as a student would either start their day at this facility or they would end their day at this facility. So the way it works in Greene County, students are at the Green Technology Center for 2 blocks. So they either report there first thing in the morning and leave around 11:30, or they report there directly after lunch and leave at the end of the school day. That same model works pretty well over in Scott County, Virginia. So Gate City, Twin Springs, and Rye Cove, students from all 3 of those high schools are bused or transported to that central facility. So it's and they use they do half a day at a time.
So are these schools at Greenville and Elizabeth, and do they have students as young as 14-year-old freshmen, or is it mostly juniors and seniors in school that have chosen a career path? Or
It could be both. I think you're likely to see more upperclassmen than not, but that's typical of most CTE classes just based on a freshman schedule typically looks a lot different than a senior schedule just based on the graduation requirements that they're trying to accrue. So a freshman doesn't have a lot of opening in their schedule for elective courses. And it's pretty well set in stone. You're going to be taking math all year, science all year. You're going to take a history, try to knock out probably an art credit, a foreign language. So as they progress through their high school career and get into that sophomore, junior year, they start to see more opportunity within their own schedule to take elective courses, such as a CTE program of study. So I'm not going to say we don't have freshmen in CTE courses. We certainly do. It's just not to the same extent that we have sophomore, junior, seniors.
How serious is the Board of Education at this?
So
The reason I asked that question and repress it, I know a lot of times they're interested in something to start talking about money and then they start backing up. Because nobody wants to say we're going to spend money. They don't see the long-term benefits of it. They always want to play the short game instead of the long game.
Well, I'll start this answer by saying that in my tenure in this role as CTE supervisor, the Board of Education has been extremely supportive of CTE measures. I do believe the board and our director both see the value in CTE and they support what we're trying to do. For this project in particular, we have presented the idea to the board and sought their approval just to kind of move forward with pursuing this. They have not committed to fund anything at this point. They just gave us permission to formally approach the joint venture board, formally approach the industrial development board, and just see what the feasibility is. Funding is not going to be easy to come about. There's no doubt of that. But we do think, there are lots of grant and other monies available to us today than there have been in the recent past. So we're going to be exploring and diving into how do we fund something like this in the near future, and that's going to be a big task. I dread some of that work. It's not going to be easy, but I do think they're serious about seeing the value in it. When we put a price tag on it, I think that's going to make pretty much anybody involved take a step back and reassess. That's step one is we got to figure out, is it feasible at all? And then if it is, then we'll figure out what's it going to look like, what's it going to cost, and how are we going to pay for that?
Well, I'm for it, I want to expedite.
I think with the governor's initiative, and that's all we've heard, and I know we heard it again at the governor's economic conference here 2 or 3 weeks ago. That's all they're talking about in Nashville. So we'll see if they put their money where their mouth's at as far as funding some of these projects. This goes directly, right parallel with what the governor's wanting to see. And so we'll see how that works out. But as far as our board is concerned, we're talking about, lot number 3. And so it's gonna be up to them to do the funding. That's their business, and I feel like they will, I watched some of the comments and things that's been made by the board, and I think they're pretty much behind this thing and see the benefit of it as I think we all do. But it's gonna be up to them to work that out. We're just trying to cover all the bases with Mr. Young, with the TCAT, with Charles, and we're just kind of being a conduit right now to get this thing started, and then we'll just see how it goes. We would ask, if we do pass this motion today, for Brandon to come back and keep us apprised of where they're at as they move toward this thing. I don't know what kind of timetable our board felt like we ought to put a 3-year timetable on this thing so it doesn't get thrown back on shelf, and then we don't know what to do with it. So we put a 3-year timetable on it to get started, and then if it looks like it's progressing, the building's moving along, everything, we can extend that as we come to it, but we felt like they needed a little bit of impetus on this thing so it doesn't get kicked back, so.
Like, how did you come up with 3 years? Do you have anything to compare it to, like some of these other places that have built, like how long does it typically take? What is a normal timeline for a project like this?
I would think you're probably looking at 1.5 years minimum, but it's going to take us plenty of time to identify how we're going to fund this. The motion that was passed yesterday, there's a 3-year term on it, but it can be extended. If we're showing progress toward the project, they could come back and extend that time frame. I can assure everyone in the room that it won't be set on a shelf or kicked under the table if we get the go-ahead from everyone that's involved. I'll be working on this daily, trying to figure out how we're going to fund this, and it's very important to me that we move forward with this as quickly as possible.
Larry, unless there's some other unknown immediate need for lot 3, I can't imagine how we could be opposed to this.
We don't have, and like I say, I think that's a good point. We don't have anything. We envisioned this from day one, actually, and we'd like to see it go, I think.
I'll make a motion that we allow them to use for this project, lot 3.
Not pretty good. I
Well,
guess,
that's one question.
yes.
If it goes before the school board and they eventually reject it, does the 3-year moratorium then come off where we can use the land for something else?
Right.
Okay, that's
I
absolutely.
think.
So it doesn't keep it tied up.
Right, so basically, let me read the one we got here, and then I guess, we would concur with that, I guess would be your motion.
Yeah.
It says, a motion to make available lot number 3, if approved by all these boards, which this is what we're doing. the ownership of the property would not change until the Board of Education has identified funding sources for the proposed facility, and it has a 3-year time limit, which can be extended as needed if the project is progressing. And we might add on to that if the Board of Education rejects it,
Doesn't matter, I just kind of curious, I do it one time for 3 years.
right,
They said,
and
"We're not
that's
gonna do
one of
this."
the
Yeah.
things, we don't want, we like to get into these
Yeah.
projects like that, and it's open-ended, and so they
Yeah.
suggested 3 years yesterday,
Oh, I
and
like that.
TVA concurred along with that, they were on
I just signed what you got.
the,
Yeah.
so I've got a motion to have a second.
I second.
Got motion, seconds everywhere, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you all, unanimous again today, so that's, you got 2 unanimous votes, Brandon.
Thank you.
We'll be expecting you to come back, kind of keep us surprised as you move forward down the road with this project, and good luck to you.
Yes, sir. Yes, we most certainly will. And I just want to add before I sit down, thanks again for your time this morning. And Mr. Hickson wanted me to let everyone know that he was really sorry he couldn't be here to show his support for the project. He's out of town at a conference for work, so, but he wanted everyone to know that he fully supports this notion as well.
I got a question for the gentleman in the back. At one time, you had machine tool offered there, and I know when Mr. Cook died, nobody took over. Is that equipment still sitting there, or was it removed?
They have absorbed that equipment in the machine tool shop in Morristown,
Okay.
which is now being moved into a brand new building that we actually cut the ribbon on down there Friday.
Okay. I didn't know if it was still sitting there or not. Okay.
I drove by that new facility, that is quite impressive. I hope we can get some of that funding now up here that.
Well, I don't know whether I ought to say this or not, but I've never been, too much to keep stuff back, but and there's been a lot of discussion here about money. It appears that any idea that we've took to Nashville has flown.
Yeah.
The new building, we're actually looking into property across the road, across the street there, Louise Avenue, across, and purchasing that. We're starting renovating a building in Greenville that we can permanently move into, right there beside of the tech center. So it appears that any idea we floated down there has, to just kind of back up what you said about the governor and his stance, seemed to me like there's been money available.
Good.
And I fully intend, to the point of not putting this on shelf, just kind of in joking fashion to say, fully intend to give the governor the Andy Dufresne treatment and write him a letter once a week if you need to, and ask him for how can you help us with this, because it is squarely within his initiative that, he's been talking about since he's taken office. So, thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Brandon.